No, it's one of those things that it's these kind of questions that I think people would actually be interested in that nobody ever asks. So it's that kind of thing. But it's so how did you find your first kind of investment, your first property?
Yeah. So as I say, we went on this journey. We read around the topic a lot. There's some great books out there. The first one we read was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a well-known book, particularly to property investors. But that got us on a journey reading other books like The Richest Man in Babylon, just about like managing finances and understanding how money works, really. You know, it's topics that aren't talked about at school. Nobody told me what good debt was or bad debt, what credit card was or debit card. You just, at 16 or 18, you just get, trapped by the banks and told you should have these things. And we're never actually taught about them. So we went and got that education and we invested in getting some mentoring and some property knowledge from people that were more experienced than us. You know, in many ways, just like you do in most careers, you go and get the right knowledge. We did a master's in engineering, and effectively I went and wanted to make sure we were doing property in the right way because it's very easy to get it very wrong.
Yeah.
So our first deal came out of a lot of viewings of a lot of different properties, a lot of analysis of areas and what would work and what wouldn't work. And predominantly our model, just for the viewers and who might be wondering how you do it, is we find properties that are in need of refurbishment, below market value, meaning below the current value that they're in the current condition. We'll secure those for a price even lower than what they're worth in today's market. We will then add value to those properties through renovation, so through refurbishing them, and that will then make the whole property worth more money. And at that point, we will then refinance those properties at the new market value onto a mortgage, and we will tenant the properties as well, so we'll rent them out. And what it does, it enables you to add more value than what it's costing you, which effectively means you can recycle your funds, your investment pot to do more and more deals. And that's what we did. So we look for deals like that around the Northeast. So Newcastle, Gateshead, Sunderland. And typically, we don't buy new builds. We don't buy penthouse apartments or off-plan or overseas. That's not what we do. We buy solid Victorian terrace properties or ex-local authority. These are phenomenally built houses that have been there for 50 or 100 years and will be there for another 50 or 100. And we bring them back to life and keep them as cash flowing assets. So average houses in average areas for the average family. And then that covers a huge amount of
I think it's a great risk protection side to it as well, because it's that balance where if you only had £1 million houses, there's a point when if the market was ever to crash, the volume of people that can buy them is fewer. I had an auntie and uncle that had a house that was quite expensive, and they struggled to find a buyer. But I think it makes perfect sense from a business point of view. You almost have mass market appeal that even if COVID-19 happens and there was a massive global recession, there's always going to be demand for, say, mid-level and below houses, because actually people always need somewhere to live. So
exactly.
It does make perfect business sense that you're almost protecting your own assets, as where more premium houses might actually be seen as a lot more risky.
And we have a huge... Go on, sorry.
No, you go.
We have a huge housing crisis in this country. We are short of hundreds of thousands of houses being built every single year. And it's fantastic that I get to be part of helping bring stock back into the market. So in the areas that we invest, the demand is so much higher than the supply that even in lockdown, I've tenanted a property that was empty through a video marketing walk round, and everything's been done over the computer. All the tenant has to do is basically pick up the keys when they're able to, and they're in, and that's it. So there's still demand even at times like this, and if you buy in the right areas, you shouldn't have a problem filling those properties.
Can I ask you about the kind of, you said before about how you get multiple exits per property?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so apologies for the industry
No,
jargon.
it's good. It's just it's questions that I'm interested in. I think people will take value in.
Yes. So what I mean by multiple exits is a lot of people that look at a property that needs work might think, I'll just buy it, spend money on it, and then I'll sell it at the end. What I do is I look in areas where a property I could buy it, I could renovate it, and then I could rent it out and remortgage it, and I'll make money every single month on that property and leave very little of my own money in that deal as equity. Mm-hmm. That's one exit. But that same property, let's say, for example, I have trouble renting it and I can't find a tenant, I could sell it at the new value and make a profit. So there's two exits. I could also go to a housing association who are searching for 2 or 3 bed houses in that area and agree with them a contract for 5 years or 10 years to put a tenant in that property. Or I could turn that house, if it's in the right area and it's got the right kind of layout, I could convert it into a house in multiple occupation or HMO, whereby you can rent it out by the room. So there's probably 3 or 4 what I would call exits on a deal. So if one of them doesn't work, you've still got 2 or 3 that you can fall back on. Most people only have one, and they'll buy property for too much money. They'll spend too much on it. And at the end of that process, they'll then try and market it for too high, and they won't get a buyer. And they only think at that point, does this work as a buy to let, only to find out that it doesn't. So before we've even offered on a property, we know what our exits are.
I mean, with any product, doesn't matter if you sell glasses of water or anything, it's having the properly thought through who your customer is, what they buy, what they're happy to pay, and just having it all mapped out, I think makes perfect sense.